ever asked yourself, how much should I actually be saving from my paycheck? I mean, you hear people say that they save 20% of their paycheck, or they're saving for their emergency fund, or they're saving for retirement, and they're saving for all the things. But let's be real. What if your paycheck barely covers the bills? You know what I'm saying? Like, what if you barely have enough to make it through your bills, let alone think about saving? So in today's video, we're going to talk about how much you can actually save based on your numbers, your realistic budget. We're going to put a plan into place to make it happen. And then I'm going to talk to you about where to put your money to make it grow instead of being tempted and having the money around you where you'll want to spend it. So if that sounds like something you're interested in doing, you already know what to do. Go grab your planners, go grab your notebooks, and let's get into how to save money each paycheck realistically right now. All right, now before we get started, let me just say thank you so much for joining me today. You know how much I appreciate you guys. If you are new to the channel, welcome. We're so happy to have you here. And today we're going to just talk about realistic steps, realistic goals on how you can save money each paycheck. Now, a lot of us, we sometimes just pull numbers out of the air, right? We just pull random numbers on, this is how much I want to save. And then when it doesn't happen, we set ourselves up for disappointment because we didn't factor in how much was realistic on what we could save. And that formula to let you know how much you can realistically save is this, and it's very simple. You want to make sure you calculate all of your income minus all of your essentials, and what you have left over is what you can work with and save, okay? It's that simple. That's step number one. You got to determine real numbers, okay? Now, what are essentials? Essentials are those things that you need. These things have to be taken care of first. So your rent, your mortgage, your groceries, your utilities, gas for your car, things like that. All of your essentials have to be taken care of first, and then you'll realistically know what you have to work with or what you are able to save. So let's look at a few examples here. This first category are folks that live paycheck to paycheck and they're very low income. So let's say you make $2,000 a month and all of your essentials total $1,900 a month. That means you only have $100 to work with. Is that a small amount? Yes. But is it possible to save with that amount? Absolutely. Now, our second category is our moderate category, where you have some wiggle room left over after you finish paying all your essentials. So let's say you make $3,500 a month and all of your essentials total $2,500 a month. So now you got $1,000 left over. So now you got enough money to not only start saving, but now you can be strategic on how you save that money. And then our third category of folks is our higher income earning folks. This is where you have enough money to save very aggressively. Let's say you make $6,000 a month and all of your essentials total $4,000. So that leaves you with $2,000 to save. Not only can you focus on savings, but now you can focus on investing and things like that. So those are the different categories. Comment down below and let me know which category do you fall into. All right, now let's get into step number two. And step number two is figuring out the formula and the strategy on how to save. Now that you know how much money you got to work with, now let's put a plan into place on how we're going to actually save that money. So let's go back into our categories. Our first category is our living a paycheck to paycheck, low income category. So if you're in this category, your savings goal should be small because that's realistic, right? You can't save that much because you don't have that much left over. Remember, you only had $100 left over to work with. So maybe make your goal to save out of that $100 you have left over, $20 to $25 each paycheck. Believe me, it will add up. And then you can also do other things like maybe your roundup change, rounding up your change and putting that into a different account, and that change will add up. Or saving any rollover money. So if you go to spend something and you get some dollar bills back in your change, put that into a bank. So that's the goal of this category. Start small. But remember, don't get discouraged. Small amounts add up, I promise you. So now let's look at our moderate category. You have some flexible room to focus on with the money remaining left over. So what you want to do is strategize how you're going to use your money. But now when you're in this category, you should start looking at, okay, let me start focusing on emergency funds and sinking funds and maybe a little bit into investment. So what you want to do is break that money up into those three categories and see how much you can realistically save to go towards them. Maybe you don't want to go, just gung-ho little on investing. Maybe invest as little as $1 a day to start saving. Maybe start thinking about those sinking funds that will cover you in the event something happens, so you don't have to touch your emergency fund. So you got a lot of flexibility there, but you still have to be strategic and make sure the amounts that you're saving makes sense for you. And finally, for our higher income category, you have the most to work with, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a strategy in place as well. So what does that mean? Now you are in that aggressive category. Get aggressive with your investments. Start looking at maxing out your Roth IRA or making sure that you have a retirement plan in place. Start setting up your sinking funds to focus on your future, what it looks like when you do retire or your kids go to college. Make sure that you are saving aggressively and it makes sense, and not just focusing on those small miniature wins of your sinking funds. Make sure that those things that you're saving for make sense to set you up for your future. All right, so now that we've broken down how much we can actually save because we know our numbers and we're setting up a plan on how we're going to save that money, let's talk about where we should put that money so we don't tempt ourselves to go dipping into it whenever we think we need a little extra money, okay? Because the purpose of saving is you got to manage it so that you don't use it if you don't have to use it. For emergencies only, okay? So you want to make sure you're putting your money in a high yield savings account, and whichever bank you use is totally up to you, but make sure you do your research on which one pays the most interest, if there's any that, charges any fees or anything like that, and then how much you need to place into the account to get it open. Now, for the most part, I use Capital One, and I know there is not a maximum amount you have to deposit, but I do know that when you open the account, you only have a certain amount of time to make sure you make the deposit. So make sure you look into that. If you do not have a high yield savings account set up, once this video is over, I want you to check my description box, look at the different banks that open high yield savings account, and start thinking about opening you an account, even if you have to put $5 in there. It is so worth it, okay? And as you continue to grow your savings, you want to make sure you're focusing on these three different categories where you're placing your money. Of course, you want to look into an emergency fund, and the amount you start to save, whether you're in the paycheck to paycheck category, the moderate category, or the higher earning category, start off with what best fits for you. So if you're in the lower income category, maybe your goal is a $250 emergency fund, and you build upon that. If you're in the moderate, maybe your goal is $1,000 for your emergency fund. And in my higher earning, maybe your goal is $10,000. Okay? So just make sure it's realistic. Whatever you do, make sure it's realistic. Okay? You want to start focusing on your sinking funds. See, the purpose for sinking funds is there are many savings for planned expenses. Okay? So if you can begin to save in your sinking funds, this is money that you'll use so you don't have to touch this emergency fund here. That's the ultimate goal. We don't want to touch this money here. So when you get to a point where you're saving for sinking funds, make sure you are setting up the correct categories that's going to help you in the long run. You don't want to set up categories that don't make sense, and then if something happens, now you got to dip into this emergency fund, which, by the way, if you ever have sinking funds and an emergency happens, at that point, there's no separation. It's all savings. Remember that. And then lastly, what you want to think about is just setting up that long-term wealth. Don't get stuck in the now where I got to stuff this sinking fund. I got to make sure my sinking funds are set up, and I got to make sure that I do this savings challenge, and I got to do this. Remember the big picture, okay? We're setting up long-term wealth. And we want to make sure we have a plan in place to set us up financially over the long term, not the short term. So many times we get consumed with sinking funds and we're looking down and we're not looking ahead. You understand what I'm saying? So you want to make sure you're setting yourself up for financial wealth many years down the road. If you haven't started thinking about retirement now, you need to start thinking about it now. And the younger, the better. Now, if you're watching this and you're like, okay, that all sounds great, but one of my hardest things about saving is actually saving. Saving money is hard, right? Like anybody can just say, you need to save, and we can come up with a strategy, but it's hard. So here's some tips and tricks to help you if you've ever been that person that said, saving is hard. It's just so hard to do. I can't do it. One of the biggest tips I can offer you is look into automating your savings. So if you know in your mind it's hard for you to put that $20 away each paycheck, have it automatically move into your savings account. Now, this way, you don't even recognize it when it's gone. And I'm going to tell you personally, I do that. This is a saving strategy I'm using towards my daughter to save for her car. But every paycheck, I have a certain amount of money auto transferred out of my account. I've been doing it for so long, I don't even realize that it's gone. So that's one of the first things to trick yourself into saving. Auto transfer it. You won't miss it. The second thing you want to do is remember, if you think saving is hard, well, let's make it fun. Saving, when you make saving fun, it's going to motivate you to want to save more than you ever had before. Now, the trick is it can get to be so much fun that you forget those realistic steps we just talked about earlier in the video. So make it fun, but don't forget your goals. So that's when savings challenges come into place. That's when you strategically have to pick the right savings challenges too that aligns with your goals. That's the most important key part. But saving is hard, but you got to make it fun, okay? So make sure you're automating that savings into a savings account. Make sure you're doing savings challenges to make it fun. And just make sure you're just visually tracking everything. Make sure you go out and you get yourself a chart, color in to see how much you're saving, because then when you see it visually, that helps as well. All right, so now that you know, after watching this video, how much you can realistically save, how to set a goal in place on how to save that money and where you're going to put it, drop in the comment section below what's a realistic amount for you to save each pay period that you're going to start saving, okay? And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I love making videos like this. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. And if you ever have any suggestions, make sure you put that in the comment section as well, okay? And if you want to keep hanging out with me and watching more videos, go ahead and click on this box right here and watch my playlist on how to create a budget and how to stick to it. And with that being said, I will see you back next week. Bye!